and gentlemen, it's the Insider's Edge podcast with your host, Karlifornia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the Slam Society. I'm your host with the most on the West Coast, Karlifornia in Fury. It's a joy to be with you all once again. And speaking of a joy, right here, right now, I get to speak to my favorite ring announcer of all time, baby. Because you know me, you know that I am a massive fan of WCW, and I'm a massive fan of this man right here, right now. He has a book coming out called Sitting Ringside Volume 1, which I cannot wait to sink my teeth into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one, this is the only, the incomparable Mr. Dave Penzer. How are you, Dave?
That's quite an intro. Thank you so much for having me. I love Australia. I miss it there.
I'm glad that you love it. Before I start, Dave, I know in late 2000, WCW came to Australia. And I like to kind of, guilt trip people from WCW when they're on the show, because Perth was supposed to be on the tour, but the show got cancelled, and you guys just all went across the East Coast. So it was very disappointing for me. My heart was broken, and what I like to do is I like to try and get an apology from everyone that was a part of WCW. To make myself feel better about it, so my 12-year-old self can stop torturing me over it now that I'm 37 years old. So, Dave, could you please think about maybe giving me an apology over that?
On the bottom of my heart, I apologize that WCW didn't come to Perth.
You know what? It was our fault because not enough people bought tickets. Anyway, Dave, great to have you on the show. So excited to have you here. Dave, I one thing that I'm really interested in about things in life is voices. I used to sing in a rock band. I'm interested in people that do voiceover work and things of that nature. But ring announcing is a whole different thing, right? It's something that at some stage you must have realized at some point in your life you had a voice that could announce and pronounce. When did you first realize that you had a voice for the work that you did in professional wrestling?
Believe it or not, I really didn't. I remember from a young age, I was not afraid to talk on a microphone in front of live people, and I used to do the morning announcements in elementary school and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I later formed a mobile DJ company with a friend of mine, and we did bar mitzvahs and sweet 16s and weddings and such on the weekends. But I don't know that I ever realized I had a good voice. Probably not until people started saying you have a good voice. I was just being me, and and then, as we talk about in the book, the whole book is basically me trying to continue to live my dream for as long as possible, because my dream was almost an impossible dream, not to steal a line. But there's so many that go right that should have gone wrong, especially back in that time when I broke in. So it was always, I just kept trying to push it further and further and further, and never knew when it was going to end. I didn't even know if it was going to start. But 30 years later, here I am, and it's just it's a blessing. Anytime anybody gets to live their dream, man, there's really nothing better than that.
That's great to hear. And, look, all that time in the business, speaking of a dream coming true, is it a bit of a dream come true to be able to put a book out about your life and your experiences in pro wrestling?
Not really. I never intended to. I never thought about it. People would ask me, like when I was in Impact this last run, fans would ask me and stuff, and I'd be like, no. And the way it happened is I was cleaning my my office out last year, and I found a bunch of old formats and internal memos saved from WCW, from the XWF, from TNA, from Impact, and some really rare stuff like the last Nitro format. People probably wonder how much the Vince and Shane stuff was in the format, and now you don't have to wonder anymore. There's even an opportunity if you go to davidpenzerbook.com, all one word, to where you could get different packages where you actually get the Last Nitro format or a famous format. Now you'll get it in the book, you know, in the book, but you get it printed out. So, you know, I've been saying before, it might be really cool to go to a WrestleCon and be able to get Ric Flair and Sting to sign right main event where their, you know, their match was. I mean, you could put that, frame that and put it in your office. That's a pretty cool piece of history. So I found it. I didn't know. I wanted two things. I wanted to get it out there, and if I'm being honest, I wanted to find a way to monetize it. I'm in the real estate business, and things have slowed down the last couple of years. So, you know, so I put WCW Saturday Night format. I took a picture of the front page and put it on Twitter and said, "Who's interested?" And I had no idea. I was just sort of reach see, you know, how people would want to, how much people would pay for it and stuff like that. And Guy Evans reached out to me and said, we need to do a scrapbook. We'll put all those formats. We'll do two. We'll do a WCW version, your life, and then WCW, and then we'll do after WCW and focus heavily on the XWF and TNA. So that was what it was going to be. It was a scrapbook. I was going to tell stories about my interactions with people. And about halfway through the process, Guy called me and said, "We're going to do two books." I said, "I know." And he goes, "No, I guess we're going to do three books. One's going to be a double book." And I said, what are you talking about?" And he said, "I want to do this as your autobiography." I said, "I don't think anybody wants to read this as my autobiography." And he said, "You don't realize this, but your story is tremendous. The stories you tell and the insight you give into the whole WCW run, you know, from 1990 to you know, the end is you know, the insights on the people you work with." And he said, "It's fascinating, and I think we should do a book." And I said, "If you say so." And it's pretty interesting. I got to say, it's much more interesting than I would ever thought. I never planned on doing this, but it's two in one. So again, davidpenzerbook.com. You can check it out, and really excited about it. You know, a lot of people are going to probably buy it for the formats, super rare formats, never before seen, and hopefully they read the book and enjoy the story.
Excellent, David. Excellent. Yeah, you know what? Like, it's such a interesting perspective that you have because, I mean, let's be honest, you had the best seat in the house for most of those shows for quite some time. So there's got to be a few stories there, and I implore everyone to give it a whirl, give it a try. Sitting Ringside is definitely. I've read the first chapter and I really enjoyed it, and I could hear your voice in my head as I was reading it. So I knew that I was off to a good start there.
That's cool. I didn't think of that. I was just talking to Guy about how you go about doing an audiobook. So there's a lot of people that have asked on social media about audiobooks. So we are going to do one at some point.
Awesome to hear.
You get to hear
Okay.
my real voice.
Absolutely. And okay, I have a friend called Adam. Adam is a massive diehard WCW fan. When I told him that I was going to have the opportunity to talk to you, he really wanted me to ask you about this. And I apologize if this story might be in the book. I'm going to try and keep away from anything that might be in the book and try and ask questions that, you know, will bring up a different kind of discussion. But he wanted me to ask you, is it true that once upon a time there was a WCW show taking place and things were running late, so you attempted to keep the crowd interested and involved by performing stand-up comedy? Is that true?
No, it wasn't stand-up comedy. It might have been a little stand-up comedy. It was in Philly, and I do go into detail about it in the book. But the quick version is it was in Philadelphia, and if you know anything about Philadelphia crowds, they could be brutal. You know, it was a Thunder taping live. So I did, you know, you're going to be on TV in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The opening plays, the pyro goes off, and everything just stopped for like 30 minutes. What I didn't know at the time is that Scott Harry Taylor had gotten into a physical altercation at the gorilla position, the go position, and they had to deal with that. Then they had to rewrite the whole show. Nobody told me that at the time. They just said stall. Well, it's easy to stall for 5 minutes. It's easy to stall for even minutes. It's not too easy to stall, especially in Philadelphia, especially when they got that, beginning of the action with the pyro going off, and then nothing. So I might have tried to do a little stand up, but what I did at the end was I took a little bit off of Andy Kaufman's. I'm a big Andy Kaufman fan, and Diamond Dallas Page had just put out a book, Positively Paved. So I started reading parts of the book to the audience. I did that on purpose. I wasn't trying to get them to look like Andy Kaufman was doing when he did it. I was trying to take the heat off of the show and the experience and put it on me. So if they could boo me, which they did, then they could then enjoy the show because they took it out on me. And yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, and we go into detail about that in the book as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, there we go, Adam. Now you've heard the story here. A small version, though. Adam, you're gonna have to buy the book if you want to find out the whole story. Okay, let's move forward here, David. Okay, I wanted to play a little bit of a game here with you about. I wanted to hear your thoughts on other ring announcers from the wrestling business and your opinion of their work. I've done this before with a couple of other guys. But for you, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this list of people here. First and foremost, when you were ring announcing for WCW, there was a guy over in the WWF, not Howard Finkel at the time, a guy by the name of Tony Chimmel. What did you think of Tony's work?
I really didn't get to see a lot of Tony Chimmel. I had been a Howard Finkel fan from when I was a wrestling fan, and we used to get this Madison Square Garden shows on cable. So but I was traveling. I was traveling every Friday. I think SmackDown was on Friday night back then. Was it on Thursday night? Whatever it was. At the height of WCW, I was traveling 25 days a month. Every other week, I'd be back. I'd come home Wednesday and Thursday, leave Friday, and then the other 2 weeks I'd come home Thursday and have to leave Friday. So I didn't have a lot of chance to really get to know his work, if I'm being honest. I know, I've been a big Howard fan though, all the way back to when I was a teenager and 14 years old, 15 years old. And Howard's just incredible. He's the GOAT. There's nobody close. I don't think. And my favorite part, it's you think back on things and you never know, you kind of think about how ironic it is. But my favorite part of the Madison Square Garden shows was before the last match, which wasn't the main event. The main event came on before intermission, but before the last match, Howard would run down the card for next month's Madison Square Garden. It was my favorite part. His voice and his inflection and the way he was able to get people excited for things. Like, sometimes it'd be a really good main event, but sometimes, for the WWF Championship, it will be Bob Backlund defending his title against Samoan #1, and you're like, wait, that sucks. but and Gary Capetta had a knack of being able to do that too in unique ways. When I got to watch him sit under the learning tree in WCW, but it's ironic that 30 years in the wrestling business, the ring announcer, and looking back, my favorite part was Howard Finkel doing. That's not even in should be actually. We'll have to do it over again.
Oh, you mentioned his name. What were your thoughts on Gary Michael Capetta and his skills?
Gary was great at working the crowd as well. He had a different style. WWF, WWE at the time was both, whatever you want to call it, was more. They did more of their in between matches, like on television tapings. They did more via video than the ring announcer. In WCW, the ring announcer, based on a precedent that was set by Gary Capetta, between the matches would entertain the fans, tell them what's coming up next, get them psyched for, make them, loud, yell, cheer, and scream. And he was particularly really good at doing that, while Howard was more of the voice. And, like I said, I love when he ran down the next month's card, but I didn't see a lot of Howard doing that kind of stuff in WF. They were different. So, and they still are different, actually. The WWF is still different from many other major wrestling company who has a ring announcer, as they really don't They don't give their ring announcers what's called an AFB, which is an earpiece where you could hear the announcers and talk to the truck, the director and the producer. They don't, um, they have a guy at ringside on that's ringing the bell, cue them. Um, so it's just a different thing that they're doing. It's just a different mindset of what a ring announcer is at a TV taping. And so, but Gary really revolutionized that. And, I'm not ashamed to say, I'm not going to say I stole anything because I made a conscious decision not to steal anything, but I took most of his stuff and made it mine, if that makes any sense.
No, no, I completely understand that. Okay, I'll bring up some like more up to date, newer school ring announcers. What are your thoughts on Justin Roberts from AEW?
I think Justin Roberts does a great job. Justin's a good guy. He's the one who could tell you about the difference between not wearing an earpiece and not wearing an earpiece. He's the one who told me he never did. And then when he went to AEW, I texted him and I said, "Hey man, what is it like to wear an earpiece and be able to communicate?" He's like, "Oh my God, you were so right." But Justin's great. I remember Justin took a picture with me when I was WCW and he was just a young kid, and he's definitely if you're gonna add up things that and it's not a competition by any means. I got to live my dream, whatever that dream looked like. I love it, and but he's definitely outdone me as far as all the things he's gotten to do and unique experiences. Wembley Stadium and WrestleMania. So kudos to him. He was a kid living his dream, much like mine. And there were a little bit more opportunities for ring announcers back then, but still it was very, very hard. And he worked his butt off. And I'm sure working in WWF back then wasn't easy. Vince was tough on announcers and I would assume ring announcers. So I always respected the fact that he would go into these huge like rules, like descriptions of the rules, and I always would try to memorize it, but I've had it written down on an index card just if I needed to cheat, and he still does it to this day. He does it off the top. He memorizes it, and he's never screwed up. So that I've heard. So much props for him. I'm glad for him. Different ride. We had different rides, but I wouldn't change my ride for anything, and I'm sure he wouldn't change his.
Absolutely, and there's another ring announcer that's been getting quite the rave reviews in the last couple of years. Samantha Irvin from WWE right now. What do you think of her?
I've been asked a lot about her actually. I noticed her before everybody else started to notice her. She's done something very special that nobody else has done, in my opinion. You could talk about the greats and the goats and all that stuff, but she's done something that nobody else in this as a ring announcer has been able to do. And she's put emotion into ring announcing. I'm not talking about her crying when Cody won the world title, but when she does these ring announcements or introduces or something, you can tell her emotion. And I've never seen that before, and it's something really special that is being embraced. Because as you know, for the most part, WWE doesn't even acknowledge the ring announcer's name. They're starting to mention her name and pitch to her and thank her, and she's definitely starting to build a legendary career if she wants one. That is, I don't know if this is her end game. She might use this in a year or two, try to get into acting or something like that. But as long as she does it, she's done something incredible that I've never seen anybody else do. And I hope she stays around it for a long time. I know she loves it, so I hope she will, and I bet she will.
Yes, when she announces, she puts every part of her heart and soul into every single one. It's really great stuff. The last person I was going to bring up here, Michael Buffer, because you know what? I'm going to ask you this because this is what I used to think when I was like a teenager, a kid watching WCW. I used to think to myself, I wonder if Dave Penzer gets upset that Michael Buffer just walks in and he gets to take the main event. That's just a typical fan thought, but what are your thoughts on Michael Buffer?
Yeah, I talk about it in the book in depth, but the short answer is no, not at all. I'm a capitalist. He came up with a line that got people really excited when he said it, and that's at least they call that the American dream. Um, somebody invented a pet rock once. It was the dumbest thing in the world, but it caught on, and the guy made millions of dollars off of it. But so I mean, it's so God bless him. And no, the short answer is it didn't bother me at all.
I didn't think so. That's just my silly teenage mind at the time thinking things that weren't true.
And if it did, I wouldn't have told the soul. And if it did, I wouldn't have told the soul. Because as you're reading the book, as I spent basically my entire career in WCW laying low, trying not to get heat or fired, so I
That's
could keep the dream going.
That's probably the best thing that anyone can do, because I've heard many tales. I think I've got nearly 190 interviews on this podcast now. I've had many tales of guys saying they said one thing and then they was screwed for 10 months or something like that. So,
Well, I said one thing. There's a story about me and Jericho walking into a house show in Minneapolis. I won't tell the story, but I said something that I shouldn't have said, and I thought for sure I was going to get fired.
oh,
And
wow.
I didn't, luckily. But if you want to read about it, but it's something that if you read it, you'd think Eric would fire me on the spot, at least after the show was over. But it was probably one of the dumbest things I ever said out loud, having no idea that Eric was going to be there because he didn't come to house shows.
Right. Excellent stuff. Okay. I'm going to keep throwing some random stuff at you here, Dave. WCW invasion of the WWF was clearly a misfire. Everyone I talked to, they all agreed, poorly done. I think anyone could have come up with something better than what they did. WWF invasion, when they had the first head-to-head, they did Earl Hebner versus Nick Patrick. You know, would Dave Penzer would you like to have had a tuxedo match with Tony Chimmel?
Absolutely not. I have no athletic ability. I would be blowed up in a half a second, and even back then. And no, that's one thing I'd ever, all that I didn't mind getting involved in angles if it helped the people. I never said no or hedged on it. But um, I had no desire to wrestle. I did one match against a referee, me and Jared against a referee and somebody else, a manager in Puerto Rico. We did an XWF invasion in Puerto Rico,
All right.
and
Yep.
and I did one, and I was so blowed up after a minute and a half, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. No, I would have loved to have gotten a chance in WWE, for sure. It wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. I, got involved in the XWF. That was really fun, and a lot of book two. The second volume is going to be about. Most people don't know a lot about that company. There's never been a Dark Side of the Ring done. I have all the documents, the business plans, the notes, the card, the rundowns. Um, and I was involved in basically every facet of doing everything, to the point where they sent me down to Oklahoma, well, up to Oklahoma at the time, to edit the shows. Now, I didn't physically edit them, but it was, we had to take maybe 60 minutes worth of content, and we need to edit it down to like 42 for commercials. So, you would have to make, do you want 10 seconds of this gun? Do you want 10 seconds of this? And I mean, I even did that. So, production, travel, talent relations, everything, and ring announcing, backstage, everything I was intricately involved in. So that was a cool opportunity. And I wouldn't be lying if I said that it would have been cool to do a WrestleMania or two, but yeah, regret it.
Right. Yeah. You know what? I got the XWF Lost Episodes, the DVD. I really enjoyed it, and I like to ask people about that. But you know what? Everyone can wait for volume 2 of Sitting Ringside to find out more about it. Dave, another thing I wanted to ask you about. This is probably the question that I'm most interested in asking you, and I'm sure you talk about it in the book, but there's a night in Tacoma, Washington, after WCW is gone. Booker T and Buff Bagwell have a match on Raw. Scott Hudson, who I interviewed, I think he was my fourth interview that I ever did. He talked
Great guy.
about his situation. Scott
Great guy,
Hudson
Scott.
is one of the nicest people I've ever had the chance to talk to. He told me his side of the story about he did commentary with Arn Anderson, and me being somebody that watched both WWF and WCW at the time, very offended as I guess I was 13 years old. Not offended at seeing Stacy Keibler on television, of course not, but offended that Dave Penzer is not doing the ring announcing and Tony Schiavone is not there with Scott Hudson on commentary. For you personally, like, does that kind of, at the time, does that bother you at all that you weren't called to come in and be the voice of WCW that we know you to be?
It would have been fun. It doesn't keep me up at night. There's actually a very interesting story about that in the book. I don't want to get into it because it's one of the coolest stories that I've never told before. But let's just say that if they would have thought to have me, they would have wanted me. But once they realized I wasn't there, uh, they uh, they pivoted to Stacy Keibler, and definitely a better looking move. But so there's an interesting story in there, and when you see the story, you'll see why. If there was a chance I could have been there. It just, if I'm being honest, nobody thought of it until the production meeting.
But fair enough, everyone. Once again, Sitting Ringside. You gotta check out the book to find out all these stories. Dave, another thing I wanted to ask you about. This was something that you know what, as somebody that I'm on the internet all the time, obviously. There are times where I catch something that you pop up on Twitter with, or on other social media platforms. But there was one thing that happened, I guess, a few months ago now. There was a dirt sheet writer, Nick Hausman, was really trying to throw Chris Jericho under the bus, and I was, as a fan of yours, very proud of you for sticking up for Chris, because I saw the amount of BS taking place there, and it appears that Nick is no longer involved in any of his work that he was doing before. But your personal thoughts on dirt sheet writers and social media and the way it's kind of affecting wrestling fandom.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to. I don't ill on anybody, but I'm glad to hear that Nick isn't involved in doing what he was doing. He blocked me on Twitter, so I uh, couldn't follow him. But I felt very strong. Look, I know Chris, and uh, I didn't happen. Didn't even make sense the way the story was told. Uh, so I knew it didn't happen, and I wasn't going to let him try to bury a guy for something that didn't happen. If I thought it might have happened or I wasn't sure, I would have I would have just backed off and not said a word. I don't get myself in a lot of arguments on Twitter. I try to stay out of that. But I'm not going to say how I know, but I do know, and it's not just Chris telling me. It didn't happen. So, I like Twitter and I like social media. I find some people take it too seriously. Um, you know, they have all this tribalism in wrestling now. You're a TNA guy, you're an AEW guy, you're a WWE guy. I'm a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 11 years old. It's my passion. To this day, it's my passion. I like some of the matches in AEW. I haven't watched Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay yet, and I'm looking forward to. I'm a big fan of the Bloodline storyline for the last couple of years. Tip of my cap to them, and Cody, finishing his story. And TNA is a company that I work with various times over the years, and what they got going on now is really something special. It's sort of like the storylines, the storytelling of WWE with the athleticism, high level matches of AEW. And so I don't know if they have that in Australia, but I know that for like some ridiculous price, like 99 cents a month on YouTube. You could join their YouTube page, and you get to watch every Thursday a commercial-free edition of on their YouTube page of Impact, TNA Impact. So I'd encourage people to do that. But I'll tell you this, there's nobody in wrestling companies that are rooting for the other company not to survive. That happened once. I lived through it. Nobody was happy about it on either side. You know, people have friends that are working for other companies. They have other companies that they might want to go to when their run is up. Their company, they could use other companies, especially AEW versus WWE, as a negotiating tactic to get more money. So if the fans want to bicker about it, you know, I don't pay much attention to it, but I can assure you that they're in that if they think that look, it's a competitive business. You know, you want to be the best. You want WrestleMania to be bigger than the All In Wembley Stadium. Um, but you know, you also want everybody to do well enough so that there's places to go and other companies and uh, so you know, but the fans will do what the fans want to do, and I try not to get too involved in it. I really only time I took a stand was with Hausman because, like I said, I knew for a fact that didn't happen. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I really dug how you stuck up for your friend there, and because you know, you can just tell some of these things are just getting just blown out of proportion. Like they hear one little thing, and then all of a sudden, these leeches, these dirt sheet guys like to come in and just blow it out of
I mean,
proportion.
think. I'm not saying that he could get away with anything. If he did something inappropriate, he should have been disciplined or you know called out or whatever. He didn't. But think about it though. Give somebody the benefit of the doubt. You know, he's entertained people for 25 years, and not only is he entertained people, he comes up with all these characters and he gets every one of them over better than the one before. Um, you know, give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. If he said it didn't happen, try to take him at his word. I don't mind if you dig. That's called journalism. If you want to dig up and if you see something, but somebody likes someone's tweet that was involved in the quote unquote story that never is not proof of anything. And you think that you wouldn't try to ruin somebody who's given you so much entertainment over an innuendo, and I just wasn't going to let it happen. And the ironic thing is he wouldn't answer me.
No, of course not.
I kept reaching out. He would not answer me, and then finally blocked me. And I wasn't going to let it go. If he hadn't blocked me, I'd still be asking him today. If you show me proof, I'll publicly apologize. But he had no proof, and he knew it.
Right. Yeah. Well, from what my research tells me, he hasn't been active on social media since 22 days ago. So I think he's pretty much made the decision to bow out of the work that he was doing. Anywho, let's get away from the negativity and let's talk about some more positive
I
stuff.
don't mind. You asked me about dirt sheet riders. I don't mind them. I always like to be surprised. And so like I didn't know Jordan Grace was going to was going to be in the Royal Rumble, and I imagine everybody thinks it's such a cool opportunity situation that she was in and what she did and who she was squaring off with, and imagine how much cooler it would have been if nobody knew.
Mm.
You know, when I was a big Roddy Piper fan growing up, both the Georgia Championship Wrestling and WWE, WWF, and I didn't know that Roddy Piper was coming out at the end of Halloween Havoc to confront Hulk Hogan, and I'm glad. There was a little 5-year-old Mark in me that was freaking out in a tuxedo with a mic saying, "You got to be cool, Penzer. Don't lose it." But that was fun. Now I understand it's a business and there's money to be made and scoops are scoops. The one thing that I will say is I was really proud of in Impact when we were doing the empty arena shows during COVID. Nobody ever, not one time did anything ever leak to the internet. I mean, it shows you how dedicated that company is to be successful, how much they love as family, production, management, talent, everybody involved. And I thought that was really super cool that nobody, not one time in probably 2 years in the studio, that not one thing got out. And there were some pretty big things we did, Gallows and Anderson, stuff like that. Nothing got out.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, isn't it? How the internet and things being leaked and all that, it kind of ruins the fandom of the whole thing. Because when I first started watching wrestling, I didn't know that there was any websites that had any of this stuff on there. So like every time I watched, everything was news to me as soon as I saw it. And it's a shame now that, you know, that a lot of things get spoiled ahead of time because everyone's reading what's about to happen or what's going to happen. And then if they don't get what
And
they
I'm
were
guilty of that
expecting,
myself. I'm guilty of that myself. I could easily not click onto it, and
yeah, me too.
but you know, you want to know, and so I'm conflicted about it. While I think it's really cool when there's a genuine surprise, you know, I'm really conflicted as to you know as to the whole situation because I'm guilty of doing it, you know, and I could not do it. You know, they usually says spoiler alert, so at least the sites I look at. So yeah, like I said, it's you know, I'm not talking down to that. You know, wrestling journalists have a job to do, and if they find out something, as long as they label it right as a spoiler, they have every right to put it out there and try to get clicks or subscriptions or whatever they're looking to get. I'm not a big fan of the. There's a couple people in wrestling. Hausman was one of them. There's another guy who has the same first name as me, who I won't mention because I don't want to give him the promotion. But
Oh, okay,
it's
yep.
they're like social. They're social justice. They're social justice warriors, you know, and you know, there's a lot of bad things that happen in this world, and by way of that, there's a lot of bad things that happen in wrestling. There's a lot of bad things that happen in every business, in NFL, in the you know Major League Baseball. And it's easy to grab onto those and you know as a social justice warrior and try to cancel people and all that.
Ah,
That's one way to go. Uh, by the way, we thought about doing this interview. I never thought we would go here. I've never talked about this before, but so thanks for bringing that out. But you know, it's fine. You know, you want to try to cancel someone who did. I'm not saying that people don't deserve to get canceled. I'm not quite sure that the people that do this, that people that are the social justice warriors, that they want to know the whole story. They want to know the part of the story that sounds salacious and cancels people, but they don't want to know if like you know maybe an underage girl had sex with somebody. They don't want to know that maybe the girl didn't tell the wrestler.
mhm.
I mean, you know, if a wrestler's in a bar and the girl's drinking and uh and the wrestler's drinking and the girl says, "Let's go to your room," and the wrestler has said girl and then finds out she was 17, whose fault is that now? If that, you know, if somebody's doing that on purpose, it's absolutely disgusting. And people have been canceled who never made their way back, and good for them.
Mhm.
But you know, I know wrestlers, I know talent. I don't want to name any names. I don't remember who it was. Who you know, the girl was drinking and was 17, and how is that on the? I guess now you have to card people before you bring them back to your room. I don't know. Thank God I've been happily married for 30 years. Because I would be able to find in today's craziness. But yeah, you know, why don't you try to find some good stories? You know, positive stories, you know, people that, you know, make-a-wish kids that get to live their dream by meeting a John Cena or a or Cody Rhodes or
Mm.
you know, somebody like that, or, you know, a company that does something good for a charity that's worthy of it. You know, maybe just a thought, just throwing that out there, but I don't expect that anything will change.
No, I understand. You know what? The other day I saw someone on Twitter complain about WWE putting out videos of the, you know, Cody was doing some Make-A-Wish things, and I think LA Knight was doing some Make-A-Wish things, and someone's like, "Oh, they're just bragging," and I'm like, no, like you put videos out like that because when people see videos like that, it makes them feel good. It gives them a dopamine hit to see something nice happen to someone else. It's not, why does it always have to be a negative thing? That they're not trying to like brag about this. Like they have this platform, they have these guys that people want to meet when they are unwell, and this is what the Make-A-Wish Foundation's about. Things like that really annoy me. I had a little bit of a back and forth with someone about this, but geez, you know, I just
I can guarantee you that they asked the family, "Are you okay with this being videotaped and possibly shown down the road?" And if not, that's totally cool. I would bet my house on it. You
absolutely.
know, so So, I've seen a bunch of Make-A-Wish situations. Some of them are taped or they get pictures, and some of them, I talk about one in my book that nobody saw except for me, the wrestler, and the family. I just happened to be there running off copies in the building where they set up this Make-A-Wish thing with one of the top wrestlers in the world and a kid who was so crippled. It was very sad. But uh, yeah, sometimes there's video, sometimes there's not, sometimes cameras, sometimes there's not. There was
Yeah.
a shooting back in the late 90s in California at an Jewish either summer camp or school. A bunch of people got killed, and we happened to be in LA doing shows, and I'm Jewish, and I don't know if that's safe to say these days, but screw it. And Goldberg obviously is Jewish, and he said, "Man, I'm going to go to the school tomorrow. You want to go with me?" And I said, "Yeah." And we went to the school and talked to the families and talked to the kids, took pictures. Well, he took pictures. I was the one that clicked. And because there weren't cell phones back then. There wasn't a camera there. Nobody knew it. If I didn't just tell you, nobody would ever know. Uh, so, and that's not in the book, so I can tell that story. Yeah, I mean, it's it's you know, people, celebrities have amazing power. Now, I don't care if you're a world champion wrestler, if you're a major league ball player, if you're an actress, the president of the freaking United States. What they choose to do with that is makes them, makes you know if you're around that environment, who are the good ones and who aren't the good ones. And most of the good ones don't want it to be known. I bet you that Cody would have preferred not to have that air.
Yeah.
If he had a choice, if I had to guess, because they're not doing it for the publicity. They're doing it because they puts a smile on families' face on through unbelievable, miserable things. Uh, and and that I've never had the opportunity to do that. Nobody's ever said, I'm a Make-A-Wish kids. I want to meet David Penzer, but I can tell you right now, it would be an absolute honor if I was in a higher position than I was and than I am. If somebody asked me to do that, oh my God, it would be the honor of my lifetime to be able to know that person wanted to, and I'm not expecting that to happen, by the way. I'm just saying,
Of
I mean,
course.
that's just uh, uh, to have an opportunity to do that for people who are struggling, or even worse, is something that to me is the greatest thing in the world. And whether it's taped or not, I can guarantee you nobody really cares. They don't do it for the publicity. Anybody who says they do, hit me up at Twitter at David Penzer, and we'll have a friendly discussion. I don't get into arguments. I didn't even get in an argument with Nick Hausman. I just asked him a question a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, while we're talking, let me remind you to, if you want to see what's in the book, if you want to see all the cool, rare formats and internal memos from WCW and read my story, don't forget to go to davidpenzerbook.com, davidpenzerbook.com. There's some combos you could get there with some of the formats sent to you, as well as in the book. The actual formats printed out on paper like they were when we used them. And then you could go to Amazon.com as well. Both sites are free shipping. So go check that out. Sitting Ringside Volume 1.
Awesome stuff, Dave. And everything that Dave has mentioned, all the links, all that, when this goes out on YouTube, it will be in the description, so you can click it right there. Easy as pie.
I feel kind of stupid for mentioning it.
No, that's okay. No problem. That's no problem at all. Dave, we're getting very close to the end of the interview here. I want to ask you one more question before we get to our final segment about your favorite things. You see the way that wrestling business is right now. A lot of people saying, "Oh, we're in another boom period" or something like that. I watch WWE and things just seem so big now, especially with Dwayne Johnson being on the board. I don't know. It just seems so big. But if you were there a part of the Monday Night Wars, which is a very important time, and the most important time as far as I'm concerned. It was so big back then because in a isolated city like Perth, Western Australia, you would walk down the street, Austin 316 shirts, NWO shirts, Wolfpack shirts, everywhere in the late 90s. Nowadays, it's big, but I don't see those shirts these days. In your opinion, is it as big now as it was then?
it's different. There's so many different platforms to be able to watch something. Back then the shirts were 19.99. That didn't hurt,
That's true.
I
Yeah.
don't know what they go for now, but I'm sure it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I mean, everybody was, and I was there for the whole Monday Night Wars. I never missed a show. But uh everybody was watching those two shows every Monday night. There was, most people were watching live, doing night parties and raw parties and stuff like that. I don't know that it's not as popular anymore, but I don't think that culturally it's as popular. It's in a boom period, I'd say, especially WWE. But culturally, I don't know that we'll ever see anything like that again. The NWO and Hogan turning heel, and the closest thing to an angle like that is the Bloodline now. And yeah, you're right. I don't see a lot of people walking around with a Bloodline shirt like I used to see with Steve Austin. You're right. It's an interesting point. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to the question, because you feel like it's hot as hell,
Yeah.
but you don't see that kind of, maybe the shirts are expensive. Maybe it's not hot as hell. It's just hotter than it was. But I'm enjoying it. So,
Me too.
I'm enjoying it. I watch all the programs as much as I could. I fast forward to them, and try to watch Impact every Thursday. And so, yeah, I don't know. It feels like it's a boom period, but you're right. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah,
Interesting point.
it's just like when the Monday Night Wars were happening, and this is my last point I'm going to make when we're having this little discussion about this subject. In high school, sorry, primary school for me, or elementary school for an American, when you're a wrestling fan during that period of time, it was cool. When it
Yeah.
stopped being cool, you didn't want to tell anyone because they would make fun of you for liking wrestling. But for that period of time, you said that you like wrestling, like, oh yeah, I like wrestling too. That was such a short period of time. I've got friends who are younger than me who were fans of wrestling after the Monday Night Wars, and they could never tell anyone at school because they were going to get picked on for it. And they're jealous that I got to live through that short period of time where it was cool, man.
Um, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, actually. Now that you mentioned it, that's the difference. Although we might like watching the Bloodline, I would never wear a Bloodline T-shirt. I'd never wear. I don't even know what "eat" means. I tried to Google it. I couldn't figure it out. I'm assuming it means something, flying for something. But uh, but yeah, it was cool. People. You know, you're 100% right. You hit the nail on the head. For about two or three became cool, and people weren't embarrassed to wear those shirts. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they're embarrassed now, but maybe not going to walk around the mall in a Cody Rhodes T-shirt. Not as many people are, because yeah, that you're showing that you're a wrestling fan. I don't know if there's a stigma with that anymore, but for whatever reason, yeah, it was. You're exactly right. It was cool, and people wanted to show that they were part of the cool crowd, so they went out of their way to wear that stuff. You're absolutely right.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. And, I remember our local Kmart, there would be a whole row of wrestling figurines, WCW, ECW, WWF, the ring, the replica titles and all that. Now it's one little slither, which is probably just like a John Cena or a Roman Reigns figurine. And that's all you see now. Last thing I'm going to say about this again, uh, an isolated city like Perth, if there's a whole row, then wrestling's hot. Uh, if there's one slither in a small, like isolated city like Perth, then it shows the difference, because it was so hot that an isolated city could have a big row and have people constantly buying all the figurines and all the stuff all the time. That's just one last point I wanted to make. But thank you so much for your thoughts on all that, Dave, and I appreciate that. Um, but now it is time to find out about your favorite things, Dave. And this is a quick fire question for a quick fire answer. We can get through this real quick, and I believe you can do it, Dave. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Dave Penzer, who is your favorite professional wrestler of all time?
Oh, I wasn't ready. God, that's a hard question. I mean, 40 years plus I've been doing this. I've been watching this almost 50. I'll say the Fabulous Freebirds.
Excellent. Okay, I know this is going to be a tough one. Best seat in the house that you always had. Is there one match from wrestling history that you would say is your favorite match that you ever saw?
It might have been the main event to this year's WrestleMania.
Oh, I loved it too.
It had bells and whistles, so it might have been that. Maybe that's just because recently I've seen so many good matches. I saw Rey Mysterio explode and change the wrestling business with his style of wrestling, and I know I don't want to sound like a cop out, but there's so many good ones that I got the privilege and honor of being a part of. I got to my last Impact show that I ring announced was the main event was Josh Alexander and Will Ospreay. I mean, that was incredible. So I really just can't pick one, man. I hope that's not a cop out.
No, that's completely fine. Everyone has a hard time with that one. Okay, we're getting away from wrestling now, Dave. Favorite book?
I don't really read books. I've read wrestling books. So let me see. I'd say controversy creates cash,
Very good.
just because I saw that all happen. And so just like I put a picture on Twitter today of Charles Robinson holding my book, and we went through a lot of that together. So I'm interested to see what he thinks of my take on it. Well, even though Eric and I weren't in the same wavelength as far as being buddies at the time, we're friends now. It wasn't anything negative on him. I was the ring announcer and he ran the whole company, and
Yeah.
so he had more important things to do. But I wanted to see that, so I'll say that. But I'm not a big reader. I'm more of a TV movie person. Live
Excellent.
music too.
Very good. Well, that's the next three. So the next one is favorite TV show of all time.
This one's going to surprise you. I'm going to say, no, second is Taxi. That's the runner up. I'm going to say All in the Family. It might not make me very popular on social media, but
No, that's
I'm going to say All in the Family, and only because if you sit down and watch it and know about what period that we lived in at the time, it was making fun of the bigotry and the all the things that Archie Bunker was. And
Yep.
it was basically a comedy showing him to be an idiot. But so I know that series like that now get a bad rap, but it's my go if I'm ever need something to watch on DVR, I just go to All in the Family.
That's cool. Okay, favorite film of all time.
God, I really suck at this.
That's okay. It happens all
Uh,
the time.
uh, I'll tell you what will surprise people is I never watched Top Gun. I never watched any of the Godfather movies. I must say Rocky 3.
Excellent. We've had that answer before on the show. That's very good. Okay, favorite band of all time, Mr. Penzer.
I am going to say I'm going to say a shout out to REO Speedwagon, a shout out to Chicago, but I'm going to say Boston.
All three fantastic choices right there. I dig it. Okay, we're getting away from the arts now. Dave, favorite food?
Prime rib.
Delicious. Favorite place to eat on the road?
Used to be Waffle House. I would say if they had more of them, I'd say Whataburger. Since they don't, I'm going to say Cracker Barrel.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure if you're a drinker. Do you have a favorite alcoholic beverage?
Vodka Sprite. That's all I drink. That and
Very
champagne
nice.
on New Year's. All I drink.
Very nice. Okay, second last one here, Dave. It could be considered a naughty one, but it could get a very meaningful answer. Favorite female body part or attribute? Dave Penzer sees a good-looking lady. What might Dave Penzer look at first?
I like a natural. I know most people would say backside or boobs or whatever, and it's not that I don't look at that, but I like somebody who's naturally doesn't wear a lot of makeup, has freckles. I'm a big on freckles. So if I had to pick if that counts as a body part, I'm going to say freckles.
No, that's cool. You know what? That's the first time I've had that answer on the show, but I've had many different answers. Lindsay Snow said mustache. Don Morocco is an ass man. I've had quite a few different answers. The final one here, Mr. Penzer. You have not said one curse word on this show, but I need to know what would be your favorite curse word.
I do curse in the book, and it would be fucking. That's my go-to. And it's dropped pretty. I don't want to say it's all over the place, but it's dropped in pieces in the book when we felt like it needed to be said. But I'm a fucking guy, and I'm gonna fucking stick by that.
Excellent stuff. Well, Mr. Dave Penzer, such a joy for me to have the opportunity to talk to you this morning for me, this evening for you. And I like to say this right at the end of my interviews every single time. Once again, I live in the most isolated city in the world, Perth, Western Australia. So the fact of the matter is you have a fan in the most isolated city in the world, all the way over from there, all the way over, and you reached here, and someone here for the last, geez, how many years has it been now? 27, 28 years, I don't know. I have been a big fan of yours, so to know that you reached this far must mean something, right?
Yeah, no, I'm humbled by all of this. I really am. I didn't realize people used to, do the David Penzer voice. I spoke to a lot of people have said that on Twitter and stuff, and I was like, no, you didn't. And they were like, yeah, I did. And I was like, no, you didn't. That's ridiculous. That's dumb. And they're like, no, don't take that memory away from me. And I'm like, no, sorry, but so to be able to tell my story and live my dream is been beyond anything that I could have ever wanted in life. And I have a great fan. But just to get to live my dream in the wrestling business, for people to have me, for you to want me to be on this podcast, is humbling, and I'm grateful for it. I don't take anything for granted, and everything that happened was a blessing. And
That's fantastic, Dave.
Just gonna keep the ride going as long as it does. That was always my intent. It might have only lasted 6 months, but I got 30 years out of it. So we'll keep it going as long as it lasts.
Nailed it, David. I think you nailed it. And everyone, once again, Sitting Ringside Volume 1, please check out the links in the description here on YouTube, or if you're checking us out on any other audio platforms, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, all those platforms, Podbean, everything, it will be in the description. Please check out this book by Dave Penzer and anything else by Mr. Guy Evans, because he's killing it right now as far as I'm concerned. But once again,
I agree 100%.
Absolutely. And Mr. Dave Penzer, once again, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely, sir. And thank all of you out there for joining us here on the Insider's Edge podcast here on the Slam Society. I'm Karlifornia, alongside my new friend, my favorite ring announcer ever, Mr. David Penzer, and we will see you next time. Thank you.